Hello, welcome to this video. My name is Terry Lee Shield. I'm host here at Love School. This video is going to be part of a series, brand new series that I'm creating for the YouTube here, but it will also be linked with some of the content over at Love School that I'll guide you through as we go through the videos. So this series is going to be about how I overcame bullying wounds and rejection sensitivity. Through this, there's going to be, I think, 4 videos. They'll be released weekly. They'll have the same thumbnail and stuff, so you can look out. So make sure you like and subscribe so you get notifications. Click the notifications bell when they come up. I'm going to begin this very first video. It's just going to be about framing my experience of bullying, of how I healed the wounds that I realized were there, how I've kind of gone through a process of recovery and healing my sensitivity to rejection. And for me, this has been it's been like a lifelong journey. This is not something that happened overnight, although I do find sometimes that that there are certain shifts that can happen that can drastically change how we are, how we respond to things. But actually, the real healing and recovery for a process like this comes through experience. So everything I talk about at Love School is holistic. So we look at mind, body, spirit, we look at our environments, and we look at relationships. When we're looking at this sort of scenario, there's so much that goes on for us in ourselves holistically. So what's happening in our body, in our nervous system, what's happening in our mind, what thoughts are we having that's going on, what meaning are we giving to the experiences, what subconscious beliefs and ideas do we have that maybe are in some ways, a lot of people energetically might be attracting that in, but allowing certain circumstances to unfold in our lives, a lack of boundaries, perhaps, just subconscious programming that might make these experiences more likely to happen in our lives. Then we've obviously also got the external factors. Where are we? In what environments are we putting ourselves in? What sort of environments does this sort of thing happen? And the relationships. So bullying is a relationship wound. It comes from our interactions with others. And although we are part of that, because other people are involved, we can't control that. We can't control other people, and we can't control how the choices other people make, how they choose to treat us and things. And through this series of videos, in this video, I'm going to frame a little bit about my experiences, some of my patterns, mainly so you can then begin to look at your own, see if there's any of this that resonates that you can identify. And then in the further videos, we'll look at what I came to understand about these experiences, how I learned to heal them within myself so that I wasn't so sensitive when things like that happen. Because if something's happening from other people, via other people in our environments that we can't control, the effect it's having on us is the part that we can control. And that's where the healing and recovery often needs to be focused. And that's not saying that we don't then change things in our environments or in our relationships or make choices that involve other people and things. But more that through my process, I've realized that the healing comes first from within us. And when we work on ourselves for our own benefit, for our own health and well-being, rather than thinking, I need to stop these experiences, being like, well, whatever experiences happen, I can deal with it. I'm not sensitive to it. I'm not as vulnerable. I don't have these wounds that can be picked and poked and prodded that hurt. I can do what I can do to heal, to recover them, so I'm not as sensitive and then potentially not as much of a target either. So through the series, I'm not going to promise any magical things that you can do that's going to stop bullying or stop you being sensitive, but I am going to share deep insights into the process of my own experiences, some of the tools and skills that I found really helpful. There'll also be some bonus content that I'll link to the end if you watch all the videos in the series. And I'll also, like I say, share some helpful links that might help you kind of dive deeper into this for your own process that can be supported of a healing journey like this or at Love School. The main point of the series is to start to help you look at these situations in a slightly different way. And one of the main things that I learned through these experiences that I'll cover in this video, what if they're not happening to me? What if they're happening for me? And that every time I was sensitive to somebody else's actions towards me, every time I was targeted, or every time I felt left out, anytime that I was intentionally left out, all these things that happen, not like saying that, oh, these things didn't happen and that they shouldn't be hurtful or that they weren't hurtful and you know what I mean? It's not like gaslighty stuff like that, saying that we shouldn't have the feelings that we have. In fact, the opposite, we feel these things for a reason and they're happening to us for a reason. And perhaps through the process of the series, you'll begin to come to understand and take some of the insight that I've learned that might help you, because we can change our perspective of these experiences and potentially use them to benefit us. Giving away the whole series. Okay. So in this video, I'm just going to talk a little bit about like some of the experiences that I had. My experiences of bullying sometimes were very obvious and sometimes very subtle. And like I say, have kind of lasted entirely through my life, even in ongoing situations in my life right now. And when I say bullying, I'm using that as a broad term because it's often what's talked about, but I will talk in other videos about why I might change the use of that word. But bullying, where we're being targeted and made to potentially with the intention of trying to make us feel smaller, to hurt us, to try and knock our confidence, to try and intimidate us, to try and push us to respond in ways that don't serve us but serve other people. Bullying is a form of abuse, it's a form of intimidation, it's a form of coercive control, it's a power dynamic. And in a bullying relationship, there has to be somebody that overpowers somebody else. And if we have a pattern of bullying in our lives, it's very often that we are the ones that are experiencing that feeling, sensation of being overpowered or somebody trying to overpower us. So for me, I experienced it kind of more consciously, I think, at like school, early school, that I was just didn't always fit in, couldn't always make friends. Or in some cases I would make friends really easily and then stuff would happen. Now, when I was very little, when I was very young, obviously didn't really understand that, but I knew there was a whole thing that my mum would make a thing about sometimes about me being included in stuff. And I became more aware when, like I say, past kind of nursery and infant school, probably like in that junior school age, which in the UK where I am, it's like from 7 to like 10, 11, and then obviously gets more and more obvious as you get older. But at school, there was a lot of, especially that age group in the junior school, there was a lot of intentional exclusion that I remember. So things like somebody having a birthday party and inviting the whole class, but not me. Or people playing games and then I would go to play and then they wouldn't let me. Or they would let me join in and then start mocking me as part of their game or ganging up on us. That sort of like thing, right? I've got loads of memories like that, just of in groups and trying to get into groups. Because what was really interesting is as a child, I could make friends really easily one-to-one with people. I could kind of relate to people that way quite well, but the group dynamic never really worked for me. So most of my bullying experiences were more often, not all, but more often in a group. So as soon as the two became a three or more. And my family dynamics, like I grew up in a very combative, argumentative home environment. My parents divorced also. So like I've had to do a lot of inner child healing and stuff, which I'll cover in another video, around the complex dynamics of that, like the wounds that I potentially carried in myself. So like abandonment wound, but also then having like grown up with a single parent, so you don't get as much attention as you might want or need. And there was kind of like a neglect wound, but also like an overpowering, like you must behave this certain way kind of wounds within that dynamic. And so I had a sister. We had a really tense sibling relationship. We had to spend a lot of time together, so sometimes we would get on, but then also that would become a bit of a power dynamic. And I had a lot of cousins, so I had like quite a big family generally, lots of people around me. So kind of in those dynamics, it wasn't as obvious anyway, until maybe I like look back a bit older and went, oh, that was actually a bit not ideal. I also obviously had some abuse, and there was different stuff that wasn't ideal going on in the family dynamic that I think, or through my healing and recovery journey, I've definitely had to reflect upon as part of that healing, because that was potentially the core of my wounds. That was my foundation of relationships. You know, our foundations of relationships start when we're like children, when we're like most vulnerable, when we're interacting with our family. So anyone who has any sort of, even if I'm saying that and then something's coming up as a defense straight away, or my family's not like that, or my family's really supportive, or whatever it might be, look at that, because a trigger is definitely telling you something you're trying to hide. But I'm just saying those relationships and those patterns were very significant in my life. Other ways, though, that I found my pattern of bullying that became very obvious, perhaps due to some of these early experiences, is like putting myself in the wrong places with the wrong people and tolerating that. And I think, like I say, maybe we'll go into some of these things in a bit more detail in the other videos, but there was something there about like I had to be included, when actually now, when I've gone through a healing process, I realized I didn't want to be included anyway. I didn't really like those environments or those people. I just kind of would be in the wrong place. Like I knew I didn't fit in there, but kind of wanted to. So there was that, yeah, like that sort of bullying went along where people actually didn't want me there. And I really, when I'm honest with myself, realized I didn't want to be there either, but because of the wounding that I had going on, it was kind of this dynamic that went on that meant I got targeted a lot in certain environments or in certain groups because I just didn't belong, basically. And I stood out, and I would wind people up unintentionally. And so that, and for a long time, so now I see my role in that now, but for a long time I was incredibly sensitive about that, and it would really hurt. I'm not doing anything, I'm just being myself and they're picking on me. And now I've gone through a process, I can kind of see that, but I was at the time very, very sensitive about that. Something else that I've kind of put under this video of like bullying, because it's being targeted again, right, is being stolen from. Now there's a whole kind of thing in my life about stealing, people taking things from me without consent, whether that be like taking little things or actually like burglaries and people intentionally taking things and targeting my stuff, targeting my property, violating my privacy, violating those boundaries. So that's like a pattern that I've had to like look at and work through. I think was linked with the wounding around consent and being violated, and not understanding boundaries and privacy and things, maybe as well as definitely as I do now. I've had several experiences with stalking and harassment where people get a bit like obsessed with us, not in a good way. And this is like an ongoing thing I have at the minute. Some people just decide they don't like me, and rather than just ignore me, like, want to try and bother us. And that's been a pattern that's I've had to deal with several times in different environments. So it's not just like this one environment or this one kind of person. That was definitely like a pattern that I have had to work through and heal. So that idea of being watched, which I used to, again, feel very sensitive about. I used to get really used to really make me shrink. And so I'll talk about how I've healed that type of wound. Speaking up now, my energy, I'll not go off on one about human design and stuff, but at the end of human design, I'm a manifesting generator, which basically means my energy runs from my sacral through to my voice, and that's pretty much it. So my active energy is to feel and to express myself, to feel and express myself. And the things that come to me are ideas, insights, observations, other people's feelings, and things like that. And so that all comes in, I feel something and I say it. And that's kind of very simply how my energy works in an energetic way. However, I have this. This has come as like, I trigger the shit out of people. Not always intentionally. I'm a lot more aware of it now. But especially when I was younger, I would say things and people would explode or try and have a go at me, or it would cause huge commotion. And there's something that I've had to learn to harness, because obviously when you say something or when you do something or express yourself in a certain way, and that comes back at you again, that's something that would make me like really shrink and get caught in those patterns. And that has manifested in many ways, the internet being one for sure. So I've definitely had several experiences online. So if you have experiences like this online where you share something or comment on something and you get a lot of backlash, that's one of the wounds that I've had to heal. So we'll cover a bit more about that. And I think what that is, it's like it's more than just being seen, which is like the harassment thing. It's like being yourself. It's like an authenticity wound, and the fear of other people's responses. So I'll cover a bit of that as we go on, and how I've managed that in different environments and circumstances and relationships. Another wound that is linked with this kind of being left out thing that repeated again and again in my life is, it's like not being selected. So, like I say, someone's on a birthday party and you don't get picked. I've had a lot of like problems due to being intentionally denied things, even including things from jobs that I would have been very good at, but not being picked because people don't like us. Gossiping, people like talking and planning about not allowing me to have certain experiences with authorities, not been defended in certain situations when legally I should be, or not been entitled, not getting benefits that I was entitled to when I needed them, that sort of thing. So I think that was another wound about being wanted, or my to do with my worth and my value and that sort of thing. So I just want to frame a little bit about those wounds that I'll be covering from my experience. And if any of that has resonated, then watching the series is going to be really helpful for you. Because what this meant was I spent years of my life internalizing a lot of shame, feeling not good enough, dealing with the consequences of that, like as in when I haven't been given stuff I was entitled to, the internalizing all that as well affected my physical health, mental health over the years. I've had CPTSD wounds that I've had to unpack. These wounds would massively impact my life to the point where I had experiences like deep depressions, anxiety, social anxiety, all linked with the complex trauma that I had. These symptoms of depression and anxiety, a lot of the coping habits that I had was very controlling at times, a bit obsessive, a bit worried about being seen, hiding a lot, hiding who I was, not expressing myself, stifling myself. And that even manifested at times, in difficult physical problems, never mind the kind of addictions and things like that. So the impact of this in my life was huge. So because I had quite a lot of internalized ideas that linked to not being good enough, my worth, my self-worth, a lot of fear about interacting with other people, taking opportunities, being seen, expressing myself, all this stuff. I coped in very unhealthy ways that had a big ripple effect in my life for a lot of years. So that was things like coping with addictions, constantly trying to like block who I am and how I feel. I spent years in addictions. That's a lot of what we cover at Love School, is that whole recovery process and the way we kind of repress our emotions in unhealthy ways as part of that. But also like shape shifting and people pleasing. So in relationships, my relationships have been very unhealthy in the past. I've had codependent relationships and things. And I used to cope very often by just shape shifting and people pleasing, trying to squeeze myself into certain environments, like I said earlier, and just trying to be a certain way. And what I've learned through this whole process, it just recovery is, it doesn't matter how much you shape shift and people please. Like if people don't like it, they don't like you. So you might as well be yourself and like yourself. And I had to realize that yes, other people were causing or involved in these interactions, but I'm the one that has to live my life. I'm the one that has to live with the consequences. So if I wanted not to have these consequences, I needed to find a process that would heal my wounds and find a way to live with interactions with others that weren't ideal, that I didn't like, or when other people judged us or criticized or targeted, whatever it was. So in order for me to be able to enjoy my life more, I had to stop allowing these external and relational experiences to have such an impact on me. And that's what the healing and recovery process was about through this process that I'm covering, healing the rejection sensitivity and looking at these deeper wounds and what was making me so sensitive to other people and their ideas or their behaviors directed at me. So this is what I'm going to cover in the series. There'll be a video released every week. They'll be in a set playlist. So depending on when you're coming along to find these videos, I recommend watching them in order. You don't have to, but you can get the most benefit from the series by watching all of them. And like I say, this first one is just introducing the problem, looking at what might be resonating with you. If you're wanting to do something in advance for like the next videos, if you're waiting for them to come, or which you can, or if you want to pause for a bit before you watch the next ones, maybe it's just spend some time reflecting on your own wounds, your own patterns, like, oh well, actually, what is the repeating energy of this of this pattern of the bullying, or of like, are you targeted, are you singled out, are you left out? How has that been impacting your life? Because when you start to get clear about that, that's what's going to help the healing and recovery process that we'll cover in the next few videos. So thank you very much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave a comment if you want to leave any comments. Let me know what you've taken from this video, anything you've noticed from yourself, or anything you're looking forward to finding out in the future videos. And thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.